Hello, my name is James Turnbull, and I'm here today to tell you something about trusts, about foundations, and about family succession. These things sound complicated, and to be honest, in some ways they are. At least they are complicated if they are to be done properly. At the same time, however, these things are also very, very simple. Um, for me, this is a big deal. I have a passion about these things. I care about these things. I know it's a kind of a strange hobby to have, but there you go. Um, the reason I care is because I understand how powerful these tools are if they are used correctly. I see how many people there are out there in the world who could benefit from using these tools, but do not. They do not benefit because either they do not understand them or because they are being badly advised by somebody else who doesn't understand them either. They are really simple at their heart. And if you understand the basic concepts of trusts and foundations and the way that assets pass from one generation to the other, then the complicated part can follow. So that's why I made this video, or this video series, because this is the first of a long series of videos. And I made this video because I want to help educate people about trusts and foundations and family asset succession, by which I, by the way, mean how do you pass your assets from one generation to the next generation in the best possible way. About me a little bit, I qualified as a lawyer many, many years ago. And for a long time, I have worked in the area of trusts and business succession and family succession. I live in the Czech Republic, and I specialize in Czech solutions. But actually, that's not really important, because what I think people need to understand is that the concepts, the ideas behind all of these things, they are very, very consistent internationally. That means that the course that I'm about to present is, even though I'm based in the Czech Republic, is not about the Czech Republic. It's not about Czech trusts. It's about trusts everywhere. So whether you live in the Czech Republic, or whether you live in the US or the UK or Canada or Australia or India or any of the other many places where trusts and foundations exist, the information that I'm going to give to you is equally valid and equally important. The next video after this one is called What is a Trust? It's probably the most important one. But this time, as a bit of a teaser, we're going to start with a little bit of history. Some history of where did this idea of trust, foundation, where did it come from in the past? And we're going to start with a fairy tale. So yes, a fairy story. But a fairy story based, like many fairy stories are, based in fact. We're going to start our story in England in the 13th century. To be honest, the story starts a little bit earlier than that, because the idea of trusts can be seen in ancient Islamic law, in Roman law, but it was in England in the 13th century that this concept really took off, and we see the beginnings of what we now have of modern ideas of trusts. And in our story, we have Sir Robert. Sir Robert is a knight. He owes his loyalty to the king. He has castles, he has lands and estates. He has many peasants who serve him and look after him. But he also has a duty to his king, and he would like to fulfill that duty by going off to fight for his king and for his God in the Crusades in the Middle East. And that's all very nice. Of course, perhaps not something that we would do these days, but it was a different time. And so Sir Robert is about to leave on his quest. And then it occurs to him that he has a little problem. Because to get to the Middle East is not as easy as it is these days. There is no EasyJet or Ryanair. He has to go there on horse, which will take quite a long time. When he gets there, he's going to fight in the Crusades. And when he finishes doing that, he's going to hopefully come back. But the truth is that maybe it's not impossible that he might also be killed. So he's off on a long journey, a long and arduous quest, and he does not know if he will be returning or not. And the question then arises, well, in that case, who's going to look after his castle and his lands and his estates and his wealth while he's gone? Who's going to step into the shoes of Laud in Sir Robert's absence? And what he does is he turns... I'm sorry, I went the wrong direction, forgive me. He turns to his cousin, Sigmund. And here we can see Sigmund. Of course, like all fairy stories, we have heroes and villains. And Sigmund, as you can probably guess, he is our villain. But anyway, Sir Robert goes to Sigmund and says, Baron Sigmund, I will be gone. I'm fighting for God and for our king. Will you please be kind enough to look after my land and my estates and my wealth while I'm gone? And of course, if I return, then you would obviously give these things back to me. And the evil Sigmund says, yes, of course, my lord. Of course, I will give everything back to you when you return. And so it was that Bob set forth on his mission, and Sigmund assumed control of all of the lands and estates and so on. And here we are now in the next picture, 5 or 6 years later, and Bob, Sir Robert, he returns from the Middle East in victory. He has achieved his goals, he has fought for God, and he has returned to reclaim his rightful place as the lord of his lands. And so he goes to see Sigmund, and Sigmund somehow has forgotten about the original deal and says, no, you gave everything to me, and I'm not going to be giving it back to you. It's mine now. So, a difficult situation. In those days, in England, there was a court system. And Sir Robert could go to the court and say to the court, give me back my lands. But the problem is that he created documents which he gave to Sigmund to give Sigmund the power to manage those lands and estates. And what the courts would do is they would look at the documents and say, okay, very, very nice, but this is a document that legally transfers the land and the title to Sigmund. So, Sir Robert, we're very sorry, go away. In those days in the UK, of course, there was one higher power than the courts, and that was the king. And Robert had fought for the king, and so what he did as a next step is he went to the king. This is King Edward I. I'm not sure if it's a completely accurate picture. Robert went to the king and said, hey, Your Majesty, this is what happened. It's not fair. This is the deal I made. And anyway, I was fighting for you and I was fighting for God. So can you tell Sigmund to give me back my land and my castle? And of course, the king couldn't just do it. He had to think about it a bit. He had to investigate. But after having done that, he, of course, gave everything back to Sir Robert. And Sir Robert lived happily ever after. And so ends our fairy story. It's a fairy story, but it's true. It happened, or variations of this happened many, many times. It happened so much to the extent that King Edward actually got tired of dealing with all of these problems. It was too annoying. People were asking him these questions. They were asking him to solve these problems. They were asking him to use his superpower to overrule the decisions of the courts, because the decisions of the courts were wrong or the decisions of the court were unfair. And so the king passed a statute. And the statute is worth reading out in the original text. I'm going to do that now. And then in a minute I will explain what it really means. So here we go. All petitions that touch the seal shall go first to the Chancellor, and those that touch the Exchequer to the Exchequer, and those that touch the justices of the law of the land to the justices, and those that touch the jury to the justices of the jury. And if the matters are so great, or so much of grace, that the Chancellor and the others cannot do what is asked without the king, then they shall take them to the king to know his will, and that no petition come before the king and his council, except by the hands of the said Chancellor and the other chief ministers, so that the king and his council may be able, without the embarrassment of other business, to attend to the important business of his kingdom and his foreign lands. In other words, I am the king. I am very important. People are wasting too much of my time on silly questions. So from now on, I want all of those questions to be taken somewhere else. For example, to the Chancellor, for the Chancellor to solve. And the Chancellor should only come to me if, for some reason, it's not possible for him to solve it. Because, as I said, I'm very busy. What this did, in effect, was it created what came to be known as the Court of Chancery. And in England, after this, we ended up with two different kinds of courts. We ended up with the courts of common law. These were courts that work in the same way that you expect courts to work. They looked at the documents and they say, the document says that the lands belong to Sigmund, so they belong to Sigmund. And the courts of Chancery were a little bit different. They looked at what was right. They looked at what was true, what was correct. And they would say, we see that the documents say that the castle belongs to Sigmund, but it's pretty clear to us that the castle really belongs to Sir Robert. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to order that the castle be given to him. They ordered that in the name of the king. And so it was that we begin with this development of this idea that sometimes things can be legally in the name of one person, but they somehow really, or in truth, or in righteousness, or justice, or whatever you want to call it, somehow they really belong to somebody else. So the castle is in the name of Sigmund, but really belonged to Sir Robert. And in the next video, we're going to go into a lot more detail about what actually a trust is. But to be honest, that's what a trust is. A trust is the idea that somebody holds or owns some assets, but they don't really belong to that person. They really belong to somebody else, and they are owned only for the benefit of that other person. So it's an idea that came from England. And it's an idea that spread around the world as England, or later the United Kingdom, as they expanded their empire. And there are many different versions of this map. This is one that I found on the internet. They talk about the sun never sets on the British Empire. This is, I believe, the maximum extent of the British Empire. Lots of countries on the map of the world are coloured in red. And in all those countries, the British brought with them their legal system and introduced those same legal concepts into these new countries. So even now, today, most, if not all of those red countries have some kind of idea of trust in them. And like I said at the beginning, the basic idea of a trust is the same, whether it's a trust in Australia, or a trust in India, or a trust in the UK, or a trust in South Africa, or wherever else it may be. The basic ideas. Let's look at Europe. It's interesting. So if I go back to the beginning of the 20th century and I draw a map of trusts, it looks a bit like this. So green countries, in other words, the British Empire or former British Empire, green countries have it, white countries do not. This is the difference between what we call common law countries and civil law countries, and you can see continental Europe, no trusts. But the thing is, like I said at the beginning, I'm passionate about this because trusts are great, and trusts can solve problems for people that nothing else can. And so because of that, they're kind of spreading out around the world. And if I look at Europe today, it looks like this. So the green countries are countries in which there are trusts, or if not trusts, then something with a different name that looks pretty much like a trust, more or less. The yellowy green, these are countries which don't have the trusts yet, but they're in the process of, in some stage in the process of adding them to the legal system. And the very light green countries don't have trusts, but somehow in those countries, trusts manage to work somehow. So this idea, this concept is spreading like a virus. It's spreading, but a good virus. It's spreading around the world. And if you look at the world, you will see that it's spreading to places like Brazil, like Mexico, and to China. So we have a basic idea. It is spreading around the world. Next video, we will talk more specifically about what does a trust look like in the 21st century. This is the beginning of a series of ongoing training lessons. There will be, not yet because I'm still making them, there will be when I finished, I think, approximately 40 modules and 7 tracks. By tracks, I mean that you will choose the question or the situation that is relevant for you, and it will lead you down a specific path, because not every video will be relevant to everybody. So for example, if I'm a trustee, I need to know what to do, then there will be a set of videos that are relevant for you. I'm thinking about setting up a trust. Is it a good idea for me? How should I do it? I want to protect my family assets from attack, and so on. And if you would like to find out more about those possibilities, or to watch the next video, you can go to www.uplift.cz. Thank you very much for your time, and I look forward to speaking with you again.